let me get to this tweet that I was at this wedding. Somebody brought it up to me. They said, hey, I saw a tweet by Francine earlier in the week. And what's this all about? So this is what the tweet was. Mind if I read it?
Okay.
Okay. Reading Tod is God. Tod Gordon just came on live with us about a week ago. Okay?
Right.
2 weeks ago at this point. And just came to the part where Tod says that I was murmuring about how distasteful Kimona's dance was. Okay, context. Kimona's dance on top of the ECW arena when power goes out or ring break. No, ring break. Ring break. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. You say, quote, not true. He says, my face offered disapproval. All I said was that I'm glad it was her and not me. I just told him and he apologized. FFS. We know what that means.
Yeah. Yeah.
With a face palm emoji.
I texted him because I was reading the book over the last weekend. I told him I would read the book, and I'm up to page 192, and I need to finish it. I know, and then I started doing other things. But as I'm reading, I came across that section, and it says how the ring broke, and they needed a distraction because they needed to fix it, and then Kimona went up and did her thing. And he says something like, and there's Francine eating her bag of nuts. And I texted him, I go, first of all, when the hell did I ever eat nuts at the arena? Like, when did I sit there with a bag of nuts in front? I guess I was supposedly sitting watching what was going on. And he claims that my face must have been disgusted looking or something. I don't think he heard me say these words because he said, well, looking at you, that's how I took it, or something to that manner. And I was like, that couldn't be further from the truth. I didn't care. First of all, I don't care what other talent does. That's their deal. That's not my deal. Number one, I was pleased as punch that it wasn't me because I couldn't do anything like that. Like, I would feel really embarrassed. I'm not a dancer or anything, it just wasn't something that I'm glad they didn't ask me. Number one. Number two, I do remember feeling kind of mad that Paul and Tod put a 19-year-old in that position, because part of me seems to think that she didn't really want to do it, but you would have to ask her that to be 100% sure. I don't want to, put words into her mouth. I'm trying to remember the night, and I kind of feel like she might have been uncomfortable doing it, but she did it to be a team player. But never once was I like, oh my God, look at Kimona. Oh my God, she's a tramp. She's dancing. Blah, blah. Never, ever was that my intention. Never did I say anything like that. So Tod was completely wrong. And I got upset because if you read, it kind of makes me look like a bitch in the book.
No, that absolutely
I come off as like a jealous bitch. And I told him, I said, I liked Chris. I like Chris. I saw her a year ago at WrestleCade. No, The Gathering. It was The Gathering. I'm sorry, a year ago. And I put her in the vlog, remember?
Yes.
Yeah. So I never had any words with Chrissy at all. Kimona, I should say. I always got along with her, always liked her, So I didn't frown upon her doing it. I didn't think less of her doing it. I kind of was like, that's a shame that they're making her do it, but that's not my business. So who cares? And I wasn't eating a bag of nuts because I don't know where the frig that came from. So, and then Tod wrote back and he said, I apologize if I took it the wrong way. And I said, you did. And then he goes to tell me that he wrote more about me, but it never made the book. So I don't know who put me on the cutting room floor. I wrote back, oh, so should I heal Sean Oliver now?
And then Sean Oliver will heal the book company. And it'll just continue to pass the buck across the
cycle of passing the buck. But no, I love Tod. Like I said, he was the first person I ever met in ECW. I'm glad we reconnected. He did get that one wrong. I will, and he's fought. He says that Shane is wrong in his story. With the meeting, and he brought that up again with me, and I was like, I wasn't there. That's you and Shane. But when I brought this up, he did apologize, and he didn't try to tell me, no, you said this. It was just like, well, that's the way your face looked. And it wasn't discussed on Kimona's part. It was just like, oh, this is hard to watch. Like she's 19. And plus there were children in the audience. And that was another thing I thought of. Like, oh, you can see her breast kind of, not that you could never see any of our boobs in some of our outfits. Like, I'm not trying to be a hypocrite, but to dance like you're in a strip club when there's children, it's kind of like, that's a hard call for me to like, you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
I don't know.
But if you're an ECW fan growing up at that point, it's ingrained in your memory. I mean, it was played on every single show. It was in between the commercials. It's an
legendary
iconic ECW moment. Yes. So when he puts that in the book, you want to hear his take on the moment, but he singles you out specifically to say, hey, out of everybody in this locker room, one person had that disapproving look. No. Okay, it was because I haven't gotten to that point.
Anybody but me. But he said something to the point of, as you look around the room, you could see people weren't into it. Like some people disagreed with it, but I stood out the most. And that's why I was pinpointed. But never does he say Francine said verbatim, blah, 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 because I think he just looked over at me and he said he saw I looked like I was disgusted at the whole situation.
That'll just give people ammunition to then say something else about you someplace
else.
It's just the game of telephone, and that's how things get started.
Right.
And that sucks. But at least he got in front of it and apologized.
He did.
Fortunately, he can't edit the book.
And that's what I said. You're making, I said, you made me look like a bitch, Tod. And he's like, well, I adore you. And I said, as I do you, Tod. And that was the gist of the conversation. So, yeah, I don't, if I do something, I'll own up to it. Just like the Scott Hall thing. That was the dumbest thing I could have ever done. Huge mistake. I owned up to it. I apologized. If I'm wrong, I'm going to say I'm wrong. Well, I wasn't wrong in that case because I wasn't blaming Kimona. I was blaming management. I felt bad for her. The way I remember it, I kind of think that she wasn't 100% into it, but she did it because she was a team player. She was trying to fit in. She was new to the company, and you're on the spot. Like, what do you do? If you say no, do you lose your position? You know what I mean?
It's not happening now in 2023. Back then, different story. I think there's a little bit more of, well, we know what she does, so she won't have a problem doing it. And the pressure gets put on, and she's naive to the business.
Right.
So I'm proving myself. This is a test. Right. You got to pass the test, and there you go. Where would you put it on that ECW moment list? Does it rank up there, or do you think because what you just said, it shouldn't even belong?
I think it's considered an iconic moment because that's something that never happens at a wrestling show. Like, when did you, unless you're at a WEW show and all the strippers come out and start dancing all over the place. But I digress. When do you see something like that happen? That was rare back in the day. So, I mean, I don't know. I think it's a memorable moment for sure. I got something else for you. I remember the kiss. The Kimona kiss. So when
just watched that recently,
when they wanted that to happen, Beulah didn't want to do it.
Really?
And they made me say to her, which I hated, if you don't do this, you're going to be fired.
Oh, wow.
And she was very upset about it. And she was reluctant and she didn't want to do it. And I remember 100% having to go to her. I think it had to be Dreamer who told me, you got to go tell her she has to do it. And I was just like, ugh. And I said, well, they said if you don't do it, you're not going to have a job. And she did it, but she didn't want to do it. And that was another thing. I was like, I'm glad it's not me, because that kind of stuff I'm not comfortable with, and she wasn't either.
That's incredible too. I mean, another pushing the envelope moment,
right? Which wasn't done.
Right. And that what they tell you to do would never happen now in a million years, that somebody says to somebody, do this. That's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that like it was yesterday. She got very upset. And I was like, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you, And it was done, and people talk about it to this day. Another iconic moment that we were the first to do. But
it happens a lot. I mean, another one I saw was I just watched the angle where she reveals she's pregnant.
yeah,
And and Tommy's revealed as the father, and that whole thing. I mean, there's a lot of pushing the envelope moments. The kiss, huge by that point, but the striptease, and the stripping, striptease, the stripping on every show, the commercial breaks twice, 3 times a show.
right.
As Tod pointed out on the live with us and in the book, and it's been documented. That's how they paid the bills. That was how the commercials were done. Is you had to sell that merchandise to essentially pay for the programming. So she had to be shown with that towel and parts popping out, literally, on every single program. So yeah, pushing the envelope, yes. She didn't want to do it, possibly, but look at what it did for the company in the long run.
Well, look what happened if you go back even before this. There was a chapter where it said Tigress and Peaches were to have a match, and they were supposed to be stripped of their tops.
Right.
And they were like, they both agreed, but then the night of, they look out and they see kids. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it either. And Angel Amoroso goes, I'll do it. And you saw bare breast in the middle of the ring. Who did that back then? No one.
Nobody.
So that's another oh my God moment. Like, wow, we just saw nudity at an ECW a house show or TV taping or whatever it was, It's crazy.
And some of those kids went away
very happy.
having some feelings that they never knew they experienced before. And they said, what is this?
Yeah. I know.
I'll be in the bathroom if you need me.
That's like so that's that tweet. It was no big deal. It was I think it was a misunderstanding, and unfortunately it'll live forever in his book.